Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for being here. Sorry, I had to sit there and just focus for 1 second and make sure everything was working. Hi, welcome to the class. We are going to be talking about Summer Solstice and Litha today. Yay! Hi, Jessica. Nice to see you. We will be seriously getting down on the Litha vibes in what, less than 48 hours from now? Yeah, it's going to be good times. Hi, hello to everybody who's here. Please say hi in the chat. Please throw up a something, throw a sun in the chat. Um, Throw a drop of water in the chat if this is the first time that you are joining us for one of the Wheel of the Year classes. We will get started here very shortly. We are starting on time today, just like the old days. Hi, Eva. Yay! Excellent. Bwahahaha. Assemble, my fanatics, my freaks and witches and heathens. Let us begin. Hey, Carter. What's up? Yay. Yeah, we got some good stuff to talk about today. We are going to get into it here in just a just a moment. In the preamble, before we actually get going, and I'm only going to wait like 2 more minutes before we dive in, go grab a beverage, go grab a snack. You might grab a journal or something else to write with. You might grab a copy of your natal chart, some tarot cards if you're feeling it. Settle in, or you know how you study best. Maybe go cook dinner or breakfast. I don't know where you are in the world watching this or what time of day it is when you're watching it. Fold your laundry, get some chores done, and just leave me to prattle about stuff in the background, all that good stuff. We will get started here very, very shortly. What else? What else is in the preamble of the preamble? I don't know. I suppose I should have this written down somewhere. Be super great if I had a producer. You know. Yay! Yay! We'll see who shows up tonight. We'll see who all joins us for this. It is summer. And so that is one of the things about the Litha class and the Lunasa class as well, is sometimes it is very quiet. It's just me alone yelling into the void, which is fine. It's fine. I'm very used to it. Hooray! Who is a lover of summer? Who is a fan of the season of summer? Uh, and who here is like, summer's not my favorite. I don't know if I love it. Um, Let me know. So curious. I myself, I go back and forth. Before I started teaching these classes, I definitely had opinions about the seasons, and I was not a fan of summer at all. Um, I definitely feel like I almost have borderline seasonal affective disorder when summer comes around. It's too much for me sometimes. But I now have an appreciation for the work that we can do during this season. So, yeah, me too, Jessica. I'm a fall winter guy. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I'm born at the very end of fall, almost the beginning of winter. Um, yeah, right, Eva, exactly. Trying to embrace it. Exactly that. Definitely like, there's work to be done in every season. There's vibes that we only get in that season, whether we like them or not. And so, it's kind of our job as witches to utilize that stuff and to see in what ways we can sync up with it that are healthy and good for us, and even potentially useful to us and useful to our community. So it behooves us, I suppose, to figure out what to do with the giant ball of fire in the sky. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's dive right in. This lecture is probably going to go about 2 hours. I am going to try to rein it in. Famous last words from me, right? Exactly. I'm going to try to rein it in a little bit to leave some time for questions at the end. But, we'll see how it goes. Let's be honest. So, officially, clap, clap. Here we go. Hi, I am Megan Angus, and this is Litha, a 6-week guide to Summer Solstice and Midsummer. These classes are being taught thanks to the incredible support from my patrons. Yeah, we're starting off with the thank yous tonight. We're beginning with gratitude tonight. I know, but that's what we're doing. It is thanks to the massive support of my patrons that I am able to do this work and offer these classes for free. Thank you all so much. / you did this. So however you want to see that. If you're looking for someone to blame, I got 83 suspects right here. But my Patreon is growing. It's incredible. The support has been really phenomenal over the last couple of years. Thank you so much for making this possible. It's pretty damn cool. If you are wanting more information than what you are getting out of this 2-ish hour class, you can sign up for my Patreon. Folks that are signed up at the Venus level and higher, that's $9 a month and higher, get access to the workbook that I will be referring to during the class, as well as a 6 to 8 week calendar with every Sabbat, detailing literally hundreds of festivals and holidays and holy moments past and present. Hi Ryan, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And folks that are subscribed at the Sun level and higher, that's $23 a month and higher, get readings with me twice a year to kind of ground into this work that we're doing here in the wheel. And folks that subscribe at the Jupiter level and higher, that's $66 a month and higher, get access to all of the writings, all of the stuff, all of the work. I guess the other layers do too, or the other levels do as well. Even the Venus folks get access to all the writings and all of the other classes, and monthly readings for those folks that are subbed at the Jupiter level and higher. When you subscribe, you get access to the Patreon bag of holding. We have tarot workshops once a month that sometimes are going to be magic workshops too, once a month. Those are free, and everybody that is a patron has access to those as a means of me saying thank you for all this support. So thanks. Again, this is your fault. So well done. These classes are being taught in Seattle, Washington, which is unceded Duwamish territory. There is a petition online to encourage the federal government to grant federal recognition to the Duwamish. Weirdly, as I mentioned in every class, the Duwamish don't have federal recognition for their ancestral lands, upon which one of the richest cities in the country, if not the world, happens to be built. I'm sure that's a coincidence, as we like to say on the podcast. So go sign that petition if you haven't already and support those folks. You can also, if you are in the Puget Sound area, pay real rent. And that is a means of financially supporting the Duwamish folks. And it basically is a pool of money for them to do whatever the hell they want to do with it. They've built a new lodge. They've built a bunch of community centers. They've done a lot of really cool stuff with that. And it's a means of supporting all of that work and paying rent for the opportunity to live in this beautiful part of the world to folks who have not received the reparations that they deserve. What else? What else do I need to say? Oh yeah, I do these classes. You can find them here on YouTube. I also host a weekly podcast called Spinning the Wheel, available wherever fine podcasts are distributed, I suppose, wherein we get down on the granular bits of the wheel work. And so we take a look at that work every 7 days, as well as the astrology of the week, the lunar cycle that we are in. We talk about a tarot card or two every week. We talk about some witchcraft that we can do each week, some journaling exercises most weeks. try to get you caught up and buttoned in every 7 days. That is also another thing that I offer for free to the universe, thanks to the support of my patrons. So thank you. If you are delighted by these classes and you think they're super dope, down below in the description, there's a spot for my Venmo link where you can send me a tip if you don't want to join my Patreon. But also, like, comment, follow, subscribe, all the crap that I'm supposed to say for a live stream, blah, blah, blah. But seriously, the little robots love that stuff. So if you haven't liked this video, please do so. If you haven't followed me on this account, please do so. And that's it. That's all. I think that's plenty. Shall we get into the thing? Let's do it. Let's talk about Litha. So we're here. We've made it-ish, right? It is officially summer solstice. And so let us start off with our wheel, illustrated by one Ryan Jack Allred, here live in chat, people. You can poke at him virtually. He's right there. Go get him. You guys that have been working with me for a long time have been seeing these wheels for years. We use them on the workbooks and a lot of my social media stuff. These were all just developed by him. Thank you so much. But this is where we are. We are here. Litha is at the very top of the wheel. We can see Beltane has already passed. Lunasa is coming up. And while these are cool designs, I also like them for the capacity to study. I like them for the idea of being able to think about where are we in the wheel? What did we just come from? Where are we headed? What are we in the halfway point between what and what Sabbat lies across from us on the wheel. All of these bits are relational. And for me, it's been really helpful over the years to study where is an individual Sabbat in relationship to the other Sabbats as a means of understanding that Sabbat and understanding the solar cycle as a whole. So, cool little study aid for us all there. Let's get into this. Here is our Sabbat sign. These are shapes, symbols, sigils that were developed at some point in the last century, in the 20th century, somewhere in the last 100 years. I talk about this most classes. I still have not been able to figure out who invented these symbols. But someday I will, and I will give them credit. In the meantime, this is our symbol for Litha. And I love this because, to me, this has a solar shape, this has a wave shape, and as we will discuss quite a bit, oceanic energy and oceanic deities are a really big deal here at Litha. Yes, here in the heart of the sun, in the midsummer moment, the ocean is a big deal. This also looks like a pregnant belly to me. And that is definitely an element of the energy that we are working with in Litha season as well. So, other names that this holiday has. Summer Solstice, we'll talk about it all here in just a second. Midsummer, Alban Heffen, Kupalanok, Gathering Day, and the Night of the Chalice. So let's get into this. Summer Solstice is the scientific name for this date. And it is the astronomical and geocentric, I guess, phenomenon that we are experiencing here that is happening behind the holy day or the cultural festival that we call Litha or Midsummer. So let's look at some science stuff for just a second. Here is our globe, and this is our globe receiving plenty of sunlight from various angles, and this is what we are experiencing here at summer solstice. The word solstice means to stand still. Sun, sol, stice, stillness. And this is a reflection of the fact that on the summer solstice, For those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere, if we were to rise at sunrise and witness the sunrise 3 days in a row, we would witness the sun rising at the same point on the eastern horizon 3 days in a row. And when it sets, it's going to set in the same place on the western horizon 3 days in a row. Winter solstice, we're going to have exactly the same thing. It's just in a radically different part of the horizon. In case you didn't know or hadn't ever noticed, as we move through our solar year, the sun moves across the eastern horizon and across the western horizon. And so it's going to rise in a slightly different place every single day. Another way of looking at this, let's see if this is it. Here we go. Here is somebody who took a photograph of pretty much every solar rising, arc, and sunset throughout the course of a year. And note how on the left-hand side of that, put it that way, on the left-hand side of that, how much movement there is. And on the western side, or on the right-hand side, there's some movement, not as much, but there is some. But you can see in the middle, there's that huge arc of difference. The very bottom is the paths taken at winter solstice, and the very top are the paths taken at summer solstice. So you can see that there's a big swath of movement there as we go through the course of the year. This is basically the astronomy behind this holiday that we're celebrating. And another thing that's happening this time of year, actually, I'm going to come back to this. Here we go. This is the Elemna, and that is a word to describe the positioning of the sun in the sky throughout the course of the year. The very bottom of this, again, is winter solstice. The very top of this is summer solstice. Right there at the middle, where the two ovals meet, that is the marker for the equinoxes. And I don't know if anybody recognizes that symbol, but that kind of looks like an infinity symbol to me. I wonder where humans came up with that. Interesting. And so you can see all of the different dates there. You can see the markers for the various points in the year. And here is another version of this same idea. These photographs were taken at the Parthenon. And what the photographer has done is they have gone out and taken a photograph of the sun at noon once a week. Approximately, and we see this. So interestingly enough, yes, there is side-to-side movement with the sun, but there's also some pretty extreme up and down movement with the sun as well. And it's something to think about for folks that have seasonal affective disorder, whether that hits you in the winter or it hits you in the summer. There is a pretty extreme difference between the lowest part and the highest part here when we're talking about solar movement and solar patterns. These lowest elements here are really an indicator of not just how short the days are at winter solstice, but just how low in the sky the sun is rising or not rising at winter solstice. And conversely, the top point there is an indicator of not just how long the days are at winter solstice, but also just how high in the sky the sun is arcing in its path across the sky from east horizon to west horizon. Important stuff, right? Important to note that. We know that our ancient ancestors were paying attention to these things. As I've shown in some of the other classes that we talk about through the year, we see shapes like this at megalithic sites. We actually see a lot of our megalithic circles are perfect circles, but a lot of our megalithic circles are actually more like ovals, and some of them even have multiple ovals. So, you know, do we know that they completely understood this, observed it, and documented it in their megalithic sites on Earth? We don't know that for sure because they didn't leave written records. Or maybe they did and they were destroyed by Christians. You know, what are you going to do? Just a little genocide for fun. But we can look at what was left and we can find these things in the natural world and go, Interesting. That seems to be sort of the same thing. All right. So, something else I wanted to talk about here is this. This is a graph of not just the equinoxes and the solstices, but where we are in our orbit around the sun during those equinoxes and orbits, or excuse me, during those equinoxes and solstices, as we move through time. As we know, everything in space wiggles, everything in the universe moves, nothing holds still, nothing is static, in the words of Heraclitus. And and so one of the really interesting phenomena that we experience here on Earth to begin with is that our orbit is not a perfect circle around the sun. It is in fact an oval. Interesting, because we just okay. So first off, there's that. Secondly, the sun is not positioned directly in the center of our orbit, or we could also say that our orbit is not perfectly centered on the sun. It's a little lopsided. It's off to one side, which means that part of the year we are actually closer to the sun, and part of the year we're further away from the sun in our orbit. And so I bet that some folks, if you don't already know this, are thinking, oh, we must be at the closer side during summer solstice and the further side during winter solstice. That's why it's hotter versus colder. Nay, my friend, 'tis not true. In fact, during winter solstice, we are at the closer end. And at summer solstice, we are at the farther end. Currently. But that is not always true for our planet as we go back not just through the millennia, but through the millions, the tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, and the millions of years of our planet circling our sun. That oval, in fact, shifts a bit, and our placement in the oval, comparative to this whole equal night, equal day, longest night stuff with our solstices and equinoxes, that shifts over time. Interestingly, the last time that we were in the portion of this pattern where we were closer at summer and further at winter was the last time that we had our little mini ice age on Earth. So yes, this might also affect the climate to some extent, but don't think that that's me saying that climate change isn't happening. It absolutely is, and it is 100% caused by humans right now. And also, this is real science too. This is also happening in a much broader and slower scale for our planet. And so this moment of being closer to the sun and further from the sun, these are called the perihelion and the aphelion. The aphelion, where we are the furthest from the sun, is one of the moments that we are going to experience during Litha season. We'll talk about the date of that in just a little bit. But again, to bring you back to this picture, here we are again. Here's the tilt of the planet, summer solstice versus winter solstice. And note that it doesn't actually have to do with how far away we are from the sun. It actually is about the tilt of the planet and how much land mass is receiving light or not. That is actually what affects the temperatures on our planet currently when we're talking about the extremes between winter solstice and summer solstice. That stuff. Okay. So just wanted to go over that stuff to get you grounded in the science. I am a huge believer in the idea that our ancient ancestors understood a lot of this stuff. They certainly might have used a very different vocabulary to explain it to each other, and they also clearly mythologized it to some extent, hence religion and holidays. That's kind of what we end up with that. But once we begin to look at our religious practices, our cultural practices, and our festival traditions and our holy day traditions through this lens of science, for me, it was kind of one of those like, oop, we're really threading the needle today, guys. We are shooting the hoop. We're sending it back through time. And what is exciting to me about that is I feel like I get to be in a direct dialogue with my ancient ancestors, with our global ancient ancestors who, again, clearly understood this stuff on some level because they built megaliths about it, and they taught us this stuff in the things that became our religions and our myths and our cultural traditions. Just that, just that. That's all we're doing today. Joining into a possibly 100,000 year long conversation. Maybe a conversation that's even gone on longer than that. Okay, so speaking of megaliths, let's take a look at a few, just a tiny, tiny few collection of megaliths around the planet. This is a sun dagger that appears in a carved spiral at Chaco Canyon every year at summer solstice. What else do we have here? This is Nabta Playa. This site is about 10,000 years old. This is found in present-day southern Egypt. And there are markers for the solstices, the equinoxes, the heliacal risings of fixed stars, lunar occurrences, etc., etc., etc. This is a very old site. It was in use for a very long time. At some point, it fell out of use. We don't know why. And in the last couple of years, a cow-headed goddess sculpture was discovered here. Given the date of the site, this could be Hathor. It's possible that it is a predecessor, like a pre-Hathor goddess that ultimately led to Hathor. Hathor, of course, being, you know, kind of one of the main goddesses, carried a son in her cow horns. I guess she may be vaguely related to this stuff. Possibly, right? Okay. This is Avebury, yet another site that marks the solstices and the equinoxes. Good old Stonehenge. We couldn't talk about megalithic sites marking the solstices without talking about Stonehenge. The heel stone, of course, being the place where, if you are positioned correctly at summer solstice, you will be able to watch the sun rise directly over the heel stone 3 days in a row. Pretty fancy, ancient ancestors, you guys out there. These these are, do I have them in my notes somewhere? I thought I did. Meh, I write this down every year and then I forget it every year. These, I believe, are in Eastern Washington. I guess I should probably go. I live in Washington. This is a modern art project slash observance point where you can go and see the solstices and the equinoxes, the sunrises and sunsets line up directly with these tubes. And here is a new addition to my collection of megalithic sites. This is a site that I have been obsessed with. Yes, Jessica, absolutely. Next road trip. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Like, maybe we should make it a group affair. I don't know. Patrons, go leave a note. We should go take a road trip. Class field trip. OMG-pers. Okay. If you have been working with me for any amount of time, you know that I go on and on about some of the amazing megalithic sites that are being discovered and have been discovered in the last 50 years or so in what used to be Anatolia. We now call it Turkey. Sites like Katul Hayuk, Karahan Tepe, and this, Göbekli Tepe. And the reason why I have not talked about them much in the classes is because while they're really cool, and while I think that I may see things in those dig sites, they were not confirmed by archaeologists yet, and I didn't want to project things onto this site just because I'm interested in a certain subject matter. Doesn't mean that this culture necessarily was interested in that stuff. Just because I think it could be doing it doesn't mean it was doing it. However, my long-winded point here is this. Over the last year and a half, a team of archaeologists have been hanging out at Göbekli Tepe at the winter solstice, the summer solstice, and the equinoxes. And yes, it has been confirmed that some of the great stones and carvings do in fact line up with the solstices and the equinoxes. Göbekli Tepe is dated approximately 11,000 BCE. So anywhere between 9 and 11,000 BCE is the earliest that they think that civilization was established. But that date has been pushed back multiple times. So we may ultimately discover that Göbekli Tepe is even older than that. So we are talking about an archaeological site that is somewhere between 11,000 and 13,000 years old, marking the solstices and the equinoxes. In fact, on some of the carvings, I highly recommend go online and dig up images of Göbekli Tepe. You will see carvings of scorpions and bulls and other animals that we see in the zodiac. So, hey, perhaps the Chaldeans inherited their understanding of what we now think of as astrology from this collection of people. Astrology, astronomy, synonymous at one point when we go back far enough in history. Again, astrology are the folk tales that folks were telling each other about the astronomy that they were trying to keep track of. So we get to officially add Göbekli Tepe to this collection of megalithic sites around the planet that mark this stuff. Frickin' cool. I love it. Okay. So one of the megalithic sites that I think gets overlooked quite a bit when people talk about megalithic sites are medicine wheels. Medicine wheels are something that are found here on what indigenous folks call Turtle Island, aka North America. And we find medicine wheels throughout Canada and throughout America. I don't know if there are also medicine wheels in Mexico or in South America. There could be. I just haven't done enough research on it. But medicine wheels were, again, megalithic sites, or lithic, right? There isn't a whole lot of mega when it comes to the medicine wheels that we have here in North America. But these were also sites that were utilized to track astronomical events. Bighorn is a Bighorn medicine wheel is, I think, one of the most phenomenal sites that we have in North America. It has been relatively well preserved. This is another site that was active literally right up until the colonizers showed up. So feel some rage around that. I'm inviting you to do so. Carter, you're in for the field trip? Excellent. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go, menace Eastern Washington. Hi, the pagans are coming. You've been warned. But Bighorn Medicine Wheel is a phenomenal site. Again, it appears to have been actively in use and monitored and maintained directly up to the moment that white colonizers showed up and started killing everybody. This is another site that goes back at least 10,000 years. It is a wheel that is high up on a mountain, beautiful view of the sky, not a lot of things blocking it. And so you would have been able to see your solar movements, your lunar movements, your heliacal risings of fixed stars, etc., etc. What is very interesting to me about the medicine wheels in North America is, as I just mentioned, we don't have a lot of mega in these sites. There isn't a lot of gigantic stuff. We have a lot of little things, little rocks that would have been able, people would have been able to move them. And that's very important because when we understand that this wasn't just a site that was visited, but it was constantly transformed to be a working calculator or a working computer or a working clock to chart the sky and to chart the incremental movements that we would see over the course of hundreds and thousands of years. That means that we also would be having an unbroken lineage of information, folklore, mythology, and scientific understanding being passed down from generation to generation amongst the groups of people that were overseeing these sites. Pretty incredible. And that's not something that we get to say necessarily about places like Avebury or Newgrange or Stonehenge. We know that those sites, first of all, aren't that old. Newgrange, also called Brunaboyne, is about 5,000 or 6,000 years old. That's the oldest out of the three of them. This is a site that's at least 10,000 years old, so nearly twice as old, and was built in a way that it could be moved and adjusted over time. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. The level of intelligence, the level of scientific understanding, and the level of community interdependence that this would require is really amazing and absolutely something for us to aspire to as a species. Just saying. Just saying, you knew there were going to be some leftist rants. We're coming hard and heavy this time. Coming at you live from Discontent. This is Majorville in Alberta, Canada. This is a very abused megalithic site, or a medicine wheel site, but it is somewhat still intact. And here, if you count, you can actually find 28 spokes, which of course would be the 28 days of the moon. So this again is another demonstration of how granular the calculations could get in these medicine wheels and what people were capable of accomplishing with them. This is a graph to show the basic shapes that we are going to see in medicine wheels throughout North America. And mark these shapes and mark these symbols, because these are things that we are going to see all over the planet when it comes to deities, as well as sigils and symbols and graphics that humans have used to indicate the sun and to indicate the idea of a wheel. So let's get into that. Let's look at some solar wheels. This is the sign from Gothic Latin, I believe, or Gothic Roman, for the sun and for wheel. This is a solar cross. Now, I'm going to take a moment with this sigil because this is a sigil that for some folks is very problematic. This is a sigil that has been stolen and appropriated by fascists in the modern era. Because fascists have nothing of their own, they must steal from other cultures. This is a sign that we see in lots and lots of different cultures to represent the sun, to represent a meeting point, to represent a center of energy, as well as to represent strength and the cycle of the year, the cycle of the sun through its solar process. Again, this is a symbol that can get you taken down on social media sometimes, like that kind of thing. People are very sensitive about it. There are lots of different symbols that we can use to represent the sun and to represent the cycle of the sun. It's ridiculous that we can't use this, or right now that there's some tension around using it, because again, it's been stolen by assholes who absolutely don't deserve to use it, and I hope that folks can bring it back someday. In the meantime, note that as pagans, witches, and heathens, we have lots of options for other sigils and other symbols to use to represent the sun. We don't have to use this one, but we should fight to get it back, because it's ours, it's not theirs, because they have nothing. They have literally nothing. Don't get me started. Too late, I've already gotten started. Okay. Yet another. We'll talk about where these are from in just a second. Yet another. This is connected to the goddess Biwe, worshipped by the Same people at the very top of Europe, Finland, Siberia, that area. And this is a shield from the Same people that calculates the solar process around the outside. And note, not only is it an oval, but there is literally her shape right there in the very center of it, with those 4 marks for our 2 solstices and our 2 equinoxes, and then all of our other observances as we go around the calendar. Hey, who are those people? Interesting. Note that sun up in the corner. Again, here is that same shape, that same symbol. These are the Dioscuri. These are depictions of Gemini-oriented characters. And if we think about that floppy hat that person is wearing in the center, if we could see the whole thing, we would see that Alemna symbol, the lopsided infinity symbol, where one side is smaller and one side is larger. Gemini, of course, being the sign that guides us into the end of spring and oversees us as we pass through the gateway into summer solstice and summer proper. Again, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. This is a sundog. This is a natural phenomenon, astronomical or atmospheric phenomenon. Sorry. Woo. Look, could you see the little rainbow wheel there while I was buffering? We're catching up. We're catching up. Okay. This is a sundog. And it creates a 22-degree halo. There has to be ice crystals in the sky, or excuse me, not a 22-degree halo. The sun has to be at 22 degrees in the sky. There has to be ice crystals in the sky. But there can be other chemicals in the sky that produce this effect as well. What's really trippy to me is, hello, we're literally looking at the same symbol. Like, come on, right? But also, if we're thinking about there being ice crystals in the sky, that means that this would be happening at winter solstice. However, again, there can be other chemicals in the sky, so that doesn't have to be specifically connected with the coldest part of the year, but oftentimes it is. Also, the sun has to be pretty low on the horizon for us to be able to see this phenomenon. What's really trippy is you can find larger pictures of it where the image is duplicated out to the sides. It goes off in different directions. It's quite hallucinogenic, honestly, to look at photographs of this, but also think of ancient peoples seeing this phenomenon in the sky and knowing that this was something that was happening in their world for one reason or another. So again, like, wow, here's this same shape and this same symbol repeated over and over again. This is a solar chariot. And it's one of my favorite connector pieces when I think about all of this stuff. This is literally a chariot carrying the sun or ferrying the sun across the sky. Now, again, horses are connected to the sign of Gemini. The Dioscuri were horse riders. They were twins. Gemini, the word Gemini, is also pronounced Yemeni or Yemeni, as in like the country of Yemen. It also means to reprint or produce or duplicate something. But again, we have the horses of potentially Gemini riding on solar wheels, drawing the sun across the sky and into its next phases. Pretty cool. Okay. Last but not least, here is that chart with all of those symbols, and you can see how far back. And I don't think I went as far back as I could have. But even up to present day, you can see where am I? There I am, sorry. You can see down in the bottom left-hand corner the Unicode symbol for the sun. That's used today. That's used in present day chemistry, astronomy, as well as astrology. And other magical groups, but it's also used in the tech industry, and it's used in, the modern digital vernacular. But as you can see, going through thousands of years, right? And that solar wheel that we were looking at, those are used by Shinto folk in Japan. Hello? Also used by Native Americans. So again, one small, violent, ridiculous group of people want to seize on this and say that it's theirs and appropriate it and misuse it in this way. I mean, A, stop it, and B, are these forces that you really are trying to fuck with? Like, I don't know what you're thinking, honestly. It seems like a stupid decision to me. Okay. So, we have looked at quite a bit of information. We'll come back to that slide in just a second. We've looked at quite a bit of information on where we have been as a species for a long time now. Let's pull it up a little bit more to the present day. Coming back to actually that's our information about summer solstice. Just that, right? Just 40 minutes of information about summer solstice. You're welcome. I just wanted you to be well-rounded in your understanding of where we are right now. But going through the rest of these names, we can talk about what's going on with that. We'll talk about some of the ways that pagans in the ancient days, as well as modern days, celebrate and witness all of this stuff and work with all of this stuff. So our next word there, our next name for this holiday is Midsummer. Why? This is not the middle of summer, this is the beginning of summer. Well, it is for us in the modern era. But there are plenty of pagan cultures going back through time that didn't break up the year the way that we do. And they thought of summer as starting significantly earlier than what we now think of it as. For some folks, summer began approximately at Beltane. For some folks, summer began all the way back at basically Ostara season, or what we now think of as April era, or portion of the year. And so for those cultures, we are about halfway through summer, or we are approaching what might be thought of as the middle chunk of summer. And for a lot of those cultures, summer is going to end either at Mabon, which is fall equinox, or it's going to end at Samhain, which is, Halloween, October 31st, etc. It's not necessarily going to end exactly, for some it is ending at fall equinox, for some it's ending quite a bit later. When we think of a lot of the folks that we now call the Celts, which don't get me started on that word, but just roll with me here. When we think of a lot of the folks that we now call the Celts, they had two halves to their year. They had a bright half and a dark half. And the bright half of the year began somewhere around Beltane and carried through to Samhain. And then the dark half of the year kicked in. And that was really the only major delineations that they worried about. They weren't too concerned with any of the other more granular breakdowns of seasons. But Midsummer, a very common term, a very common name for this holiday. So, moving into these others, Albenhefen, this is the Druidic name for this holiday, and it means the light of summer, or potentially the light of the shore. Now, also I want to be very clear here that this is modern Druidic practice. A person revealed, invented, this name somewhere in the 1800s. We do not have written records, more or less, left over from the ancient Druids. So when we talk about Druidic practice, we're usually talking about things that were either discovered or connected or invented somewhere in the last 200, 250-ish years. So, Albenhefen, the light of summer, or sometimes the light of the shore. And that's that idea, again, of oceans and water somehow being involved in all of this stuff. Why? We're heading into Cancer season. We're heading into the first water sign of the astrological year. So there is that. Kupalanok, or Kupala night. This is a name that is used by the Slavic folks around the planet then and now, and was a multi-day, week-long plus festival. Lots of fun, lots of dancing, lots of singing, lots of carousing. We're going to get into a lot of our traditions that we talk about, whether it's Kupalanok or a lot of these other holiday names here in just a second. Gathering Day. So this connects to the process and the practice of summer solstice and the weeks following summer solstice as being the most potent time for witches, pagans, and heathens, wizards, warlocks, sorcerers, and other magical weirdos to go out and collect, harvest, and, bring together the plant material that they intend to dry and store and use throughout the rest of the solar year and into next year up to the next spring, or even later than that. Why? Because again, the sun is thought of as being at the height of its power. It's at the height of the sky for those of us here in the Northern Hemisphere. And so this was thought to be filling the plants with power, to be filling the flowers and the branches and the seeds and the everything about the plant with an abundance of power. And so, of course, this would be then the best time to harvest that plant material, to be able to scoop up the plants while they are at their fullness of power, and then dry them and store them and be able to tap that power as we move through the rest of the year. Now, here's my little rant. If you've been here before, you've heard me say this, but this is the thing. Harvest ethically or I'll come for you. Okay, look. I'll pull the whole car over. And by car, I mean the planet. Okay, don't start with me. Please, 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 harvest ethically. A one in sum is a great practice. Pick a magical number, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. If you don't see a lot of a plant, don't harvest it that year. You don't know what that plant is going through. You don't know what they're working with. And so don't be that person that takes the last of something and potentially destroys the opportunity for that plant to grow in that area. Don't be that guy. Don't harvest off of private land unless you have permission. And it really takes about 30 seconds to go ask somebody, hey, can I have some of what you have on your property, please, and thank you. Leave no trace, and bring with you as well an offering. And how do I leave no trace but leave an offering? Pour some fresh water on the ground. You don't need to leave sparkly stuff. You don't need to leave tchotchkes. And I understand as a witch, I deeply understand the urge to leave a crystal with a tree or to leave a little memento, a little statue, a little something. I totally understand. But the natural world has had enough of our shit. Literally and literally. The natural world has had an abundance of our leavings. We don't need to leave more stuff out in the natural world. Again, deeply understand the urge to leave a crystal with a tree or to leave a little statue or to leave a little offering of some type. Bring some clean water with you. Pray over that water, meditate with it, invigorate, charge that water with power, and then give it to the earth, give it back to the earth. And before you harvest any plants, ask for permission. Sit with that plant, take a few deep breaths, ground yourself, center, come to calm, and then just listen. And you are going to hear an emphatic yes or something else. And just like everywhere else in human behavior, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, we don't have consent. Again, you don't know what's going on with that plant. There could be all kinds of reasons why that plant doesn't need you harvesting it at this time or can't handle you harvesting at this time. And think further into this, and I talked about this on the podcast last week, and I'll say it again. These are, in theory, entities that we want to do magic with. We don't want to start that relationship off by controlling them and manipulating them and just seizing them into our work and our machinations and our plans. We want to invite them as magical beings and energetic beings to participate and assist us in our work. And so again, if we're not getting an enthusiastic yes from the natural world, there's probably something going on. Leave the offering anyways. Who knows, what you might be helping to support in that moment. Okay, there's the lecture about harvesting ethically, but yes, this is all connected. Oh, you know what? There's one other thing I will say about this. I heavily encourage, given all those other rules as well, but still, I heavily encourage working with invasive species, especially to the point of helping eradicate invasive species. In witchcraft, we have a lot of plants that are traditionally taught as this is something that we should grow. This is something we should always be working with. But here, for us in North America, a lot of that stuff is not native to our continent. So it may or may not be the ethical move to plant more of that stuff and bring more of it into the world. St. John's wort, for example, is one of the great harvested plants at Summer Solstice. We'll get into that a little bit in just a second, but it is absolutely one of the great traditions to harvest St. John's wort on Midsummer, on Summer Solstice, the night of it before the sun rises the next day. And yet, it grows wild, it grows everywhere in Europe, native to that continent, not native to North America. And in large doses, this plant can be toxic to animals and pollinators. It can do everything from causing skin irritation for those creatures, causing sunburns and skin sensitivity for those creatures, all the way up to a type of delirium where animals that are grazing, like cows, on big patches of St. John's wort will literally walk in circles. They cannot stop walking in a circle, although, and also as a side note, hello, walking in a circle? Whoa, wait a minute. That's a little on the nose, isn't it? But they will walk to exhaustion. So, if you are a witch and you're thinking about planting a magical garden, consider what plants might be best for your work, sure, but what plants are going to be best for the environment that you're growing in, and you know, have a bit of thought for the other beings that may encounter that plant. That said, harvest the shit out of St. John's wort if you find it in the wild here in North America, because it is an invasive plant, and we should ultimately be eradicating it from the wild as much as we can. So, there, okay. Now I'm done with that rant. I'm sure there'll be more in the future. Because, hi, that's my brand. Hello, that's my brand. So, last but not least, on this night, we have the Night of the Chalice. And again, this is speaking to that other energy that's here in Litha around water, oceans, rivers, water sources, all of that stuff. There's a lot of connections here to pregnancy, sure, right? We think of the chalice, of the body, and the womb that some beings have in their bodies, and that being the great chalice within which humans grow. But we can also think of this as the chalice of the ocean. Oceanic stuff is really big at this time of year because the weather is nice enough for people to be out on the waterways and in bodies of water, whether it was for war, trade, travel, exploration. This was the time of year that people got in their boats and went and did stuff over there. And this connects deeply to our Gemini energy, and it connects deeply to our Cancer energy. It's really important to note that Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, as well as the two mythical figures that we think of as Gemini, Castor and Pollux, were worshipped heavily by mariners and seafaring folk. Intimately connected with fishing, intimately connected with sea travel, all of that stuff. And interesting when we think about like crashing waves, thought of as like the horses of Poseidon, and there's rabbit holes. I invite you to go down them. We have no time. We have no time to do it all in this class. But then, of course, Cancer being the great mother, the great womb of the universe. And so the Night of the Chalice is the current modern Wiccan term or title for this holiday. And sometimes the Night of the Chalice is actually celebrated as Summer Solstice, and sometimes it's celebrated very close to it, a few days off. Okay, so let's talk about what we're doing past and present. Let's get deeper into those holidays that we just talked about. So what we're doing as our witches work at this time of year is we are dealing with issues around power, transformation, determination, confirmation or commitment, healing, fertility, and fire, light, vitality, all of that good stuff. And in this section of this wheel, and embodiment. I couldn't actually see my own slide. I was like, what are we doing? Oh yeah, I'm a professional. I've taught these classes for 8 years. I know what I'm doing. These are kind of the overarching themes of our magic, our worship, our ritualism that we are getting up to during Litha season. So when we are moving through spring, we are experimenting with stuff. We are waking back up from the death and stillness of winter. We're stretching ourselves. We're opening back up to the world. We're waking our bodies back up. And we are ultimately experimenting with a whole bunch of stuff. The new solar cycle invites us to give it a try. Let's see. Let's see what happens. And it invites us to have an attitude of, I've never done this before, I've never tried this before, I've never tasted this before, I've never been to that place before, as a means of, again, waking ourselves up and moving ourselves into new territory, or at least new attitudes about old territories. And one of the metaphors that I work with a lot during our spring holidays, Ostara as well as Beltane, is that we're throwing seeds into the metaphorical garden of our life. We're just tossing seeds out there and we're going to see what happens. It's a big experiment. When we leave Beltane and we step into Litha, we leave spring and we step through the gateway, that we step across the threshold into summer. And in summer, we're not experimenting anymore. Now, I'm speaking metaphorically, I'm speaking spiritually. In our real lives, we can experiment whenever we want. We can seize power whenever we want. We can do all the things whenever we want to, but there's a biorhythm here that we get to work with if we choose to. And in summer, we start to claim some of that stuff that we've been experimenting with. And this can be interesting and tough work because a lot of this process is about weeding out some stuff. I was just talking to someone the other day and I was saying, at summertime, we start to thin out the carrots. We start to thin out the seedlings. We have thrown potentially dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of seeds into the soil, and they're all probably sprouting to some extent. But we already know some of those plants, aka projects in our life, moments, things that we're working on or want to focus on, some of those things are just not taken off in the way that we hoped they would. Boop, weed them out. Some of those things are crowding out and taking up too much energy from other stuff that we need to focus on or want to focus on. Weed them out. So in Litha season, we are going through our metaphorical garden of our life, and we are weeding out some of the projects and some of the experiments, and we're saying, we're not going to focus on you this time around. It's not your time this time around. We might do it next time. It's not a no forever. It's just a no for now. And this does a couple of things. One, it recoups our energy from being scattered in a million different directions. Hi, Gemini. Hi. It recoups some of our energy from being scattered in a million directions. And then we have a nice reservoir of energy to push into those few projects, those few movements, those few ideas that we are claiming, that we are confirming, that we are determining this is the thing that I'm going to put my power and emphasis and effect behind. This is the thing that's going to get my push or my thrust this year. And we have to do that. We can't do all the things all the time. Again, hi, Geminis. We can't. We're not allowed. Also, hi, Sagittariuses, hi, Aries, hi, Leo. We're not supposed to do all the things all the time. Newsflash. So stop it. Stop it with me. Stop it. This is what we're doing. Okay. So within all of that stuff, I want to go through some of my notes around the ways that we have been celebrating this stuff, the ways that we have been formulating ritual and practices around doing these things, or, you know, deciding how, in what order we're going to approach this stuff, what gets our emphasis, what is the most important stuff. So I've mentioned John a couple of times, right? St. John's wort. The feast of St. John, which we'll talk about even more in just a second, but the feast of St. John takes place, I guess I'm going to talk about it right now, takes place approximately June 24th every year. Now, remember what I said at the beginning of class about thinking about what is opposite us on the wheel. Take your time. Anybody make that connection? What is opposite us on the wheel right now? Christ Mass. And we think about the two figures of Saint John and Christ. Not a class on Catholicism, but the Catholics did steal a lot of stuff from the pagans, so we kind of can't talk about paganism unless we talk about where the traces of it that have been left in some of these other religions. Saint John the Baptist, pretty into water stuff. Hi, hello. And so we find that a lot of the ancient pagan holidays, and by ancient in this moment, what I'm talking about is stuff from the last 2-ish thousand years, the last 1700-ish years. A lot of our pagan traditions got subsumed into Catholic practices, and the local saint, the local god, or the god or goddess that couldn't be destroyed was turned into a saint. Pretty much everywhere you have a saint, you look behind them and you're going to find a goddess or a god, whether it was a local or a larger than that goddess or god. Nearly every time they're back there. So are we seeing something that's similar to the Holly King and the Oak King in Jesus and John? Possibly. Possibly. Maybe. But the St. John feasts displaced a lot of the earlier pagan practices that were celebrating summer solstice. And so it's a really great place to start in terms of doing your own research online for more information about this holiday and other practices. So when we go back and we look through time, what are the things that we're seeing? Well, some of the biggest stuff that we see are bonfires. Hello. Yes, let's burn things. Burning things at the edge of water, whether it's the edge of the ocean or the edge of a lake. And so you literally have the symbol of the water and the fire together in the same place. The bigger, the better. Set it all on fire. Witches. Any excuse to set things on fire. We're pretty down with it, honestly. So bonfires were a really big deal. Bonfires represent heat. They represent the sun. They represent force and power. They're also quite protective, and they're very purifying, and they are often used in healing practices in a variety of ways. At Beltane, as well as during Litha season, it was very normal tradition for these bonfires to burn hot. Sometimes there was one, sometimes there was two. And if there were two bonfires, people would drive their cattle in between the bonfires to purify them and bless them, as well as, my expectation is, even if the animals weren't burned, and I'm sure that they were not, because this is the livestock that these people would be living on. They're not trying to burn their cattle. But they might be fumigated to some extent, and it might help kill off insects and pests that had infested that animal. But even if that wasn't happening, this was an absolute energetic purification and blessing and a seal of protection on these animals. If it was just one bonfire, folks would wait until the fires had almost gone out, and then they would drive their cattle through the coals. So either way, coals from the bonfires would be taken home and used to light a new fire in the house, in the heart of the home, the center of heat and activity in the home. And so that blessing would be brought from the center, from the center of community back to the personal residence. Other stuff that we see happening at this time, poles. Now, we all think of them as maypoles, and that's perfectly fine. Calling it a June pole, most people aren't going to know what you're talking about. We're talking about all the same stuff. But there's a big difference, or an interesting difference, between the maypoles that we see at Beltane and the maypoles that we see here at Summer Solstice or Litha. Note first off in this painting, I always forget which way to point. Note first off in this painting how gigantically tall this pole is. Hey, wait, right? We're thinking about the sun being at its highest point in the sky. So there's a connection there. 2, this is a pole that has stuff going on up at the top, but not a lot of stuff going on below. I mean, there's people doing things, but they're not really interacting with the pole. And when we see some of the other modern creations, or modern / not so modern May poles that are used here at Litha season, we don't see that traditional collection of ribbons that we see in Beltane. And so one of the things that I've noticed about the two poles that I think is a really interesting difference is at Beltane, there is a lot of interaction between humans and the pole itself. Again, people dancing around it, but holding the ribbons, braiding the ribbons down the pole as they do this interlocking dance, that type of stuff. But at Litha, we see poles that are stationary and they don't have parts that people are necessarily interacting with. People are interacting with each other in the presence of the pole. Um, and I think that that's an interesting division there. I think that's an interesting thing. Um, and also note this shape versus the traditional Beltane maypole shape. Again, in a traditional Beltane maypole, you would have a ring around the top, probably decorated in flowers. Some don't, but you would have this big cascade of ribbons that come down the pole, and everybody grabs a ribbon and they do their little interweaving dance, and it braids the ribbons down the pole. Here we have this structure of a type of cross. And to me, it immediately makes me think of the solstices and the equinoxes. It makes me think about that cross that we see in the center of the symbol for Biway, the center of the shield there, and all of our other solar crosses, right? It's the crossways between the solstices and the equinoxes. Is that exactly what it is? I don't know. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's what I see. And these two circles, maybe they're the sun and moon, maybe they're the sun at the high point and the low point, right? We can work with this symbolism and this imagery in a lot of different ways. And I'm sure that there are people out there writing about this. Again, this is a spot where I could do more research. I haven't done it yet. But this is clearly a pretty cool tradition and something that has a very structured tradition behind it, right? Folks aren't just doing any old thing for Litha. They're building these very specific shapes for their poles for Litha. But coming back down to what the heck the humans are doing, as I mentioned, there's a lot more interaction with each other. And so actually, let me just go here. There's a lot more interaction with each other at Litha season. And so the types of things that we see happening now, there's a lot of brewing happening. Goddess bless. We love a beer, especially if it's cold. We have our herb harvesting happening. We have a lot of sacred marriages taking place at this time. When we think about the modern pagan Wicca symbolism, we are witnessing the, and I guess I should say this actually. Here again, we're talking about interactions between people. And those interactions between beings take form in one of two ways. And both of them have to do with power and transformation. One is sacred marriages, and two is sacred combat or sacred competition. So at this time of year for modern pagans, we have the great battle between the Holly King and the Oak King. The Oak King has been reigning high over the cold half of the year. From winter solstice to summer solstice, the Oak King is in charge. Interestingly enough, the Celtic tree month of oak begins in June. So the month of the Oak King, or the oak tree, begins right here in this last few weeks of the Oak King's reign. And then the Oak King and the Holly King battle. And sometimes, depending on the pagan tradition or the folk tale that you're reading or the era that we're talking about this imagery coming from, we have these guys in a sacred joust. It could be just a game competition. It could be a playful competition, all the way up to a wounding of the Oak King, all the way up to a literal death of the Oak King and the destruction of the Oak King. And then the Holly King takes over. In a lot of these, the Oak King is blinded. Interesting symbolism for some of our gods out there that are going to be doing things throughout summer and towards fall. But the Holly King takes over. The Holly King is fast, brash, ready to go, has zero experience, doesn't care. Has a velvet frock and is on the move, like ready to party. Hit the QR code and come meet us at the after party, says the Holly King. That's the whole vibe of the Holly King. Holly King is here for fun, here for a good time, not for a long time. It's youthful, it's silly, it's playful. And so in that, we have that sacred competition thing. And starting now in Litha season and running all the way through Lunasa season, we will see sacred games taking place between gods and goddesses amongst a bunch of our mythical characters that kind of do their thing at this time of year, as well as various cultures, past and present. Thinking about the Olympics, right? But we also have the Taltian games that we're going to see in Lunasad or Lunasa. And we'll talk about that more later when we get there, 6 weeks from now. But the sacred competition stuff begins. And that's sort of an expression of this power, an expression of that claiming thing, that determination thing of like, nope, I want it to be a certain way, and I'm going to make it be that way. And then also we have sacred marriages happening at this time. So we have that exchange between the Oak King and the Holly King. The Oak King is out, the Holly King is in, and the goddess takes the Holly King as her consort. And they have what we delicately refer to here in the classes as the sacred knocking of boots. There's the holy get down. And the get back up again. He better, right? If you know, you know. Or just buy an extra one, whatever. But be that as it may. The goddess takes in the Holly King and takes in his energy, their energy, and is going to carry forward the work of the goddess, potentially getting pregnant with what we are going to think of as the baby, aka the harvest, that will be coming in Lunasa season, Mabon season, Samhain season. So she's taking in that energy, and the Holly King then is sort of blessed with her power and her, she kind of has given him the okay to kind of run the show. And why again are we seeing this here? Because, of course, the sun is at the highest point. So if we're doing any fertility magic, if the gods and goddesses are going to practice fertility magic, now would be the time, because the sun is only going down from this point. Even though we are in the hottest part of the year and it doesn't really feel like it, it doesn't really seem like it, we know that in the back of our minds, incrementally, the sun is getting lower and lower by, 0.01 degrees every day in the sky, right? We saw the symbol. We saw the shape of the sun's pattern. We know that we are at the highest point. So if we are going to be working with the gods and goddesses to pull in energy and to create a thing and to commit to a project, let's do it when it's at the highest point of its power. Why not? So couple making of all types is really important here. And there's some beautiful traditions around St. John's night / summer solstice night of going out into the woods and looking for the fern that is blooming in the woods. Side note, ferns don't bloom. So, assume what you will about what that might be a metaphor for. This is one of the holidays where people who identify as femme or women or femme-centric are picking. They are the ones that are activating the coupling. They are choosing. They're doing the claiming. And again, harvesting, all of that stuff. I'm looking through my notes. I'm like, what else do I want to say about this? Because, of course, there's always so much. Partying is a huge deal at this time of year. Partying all night into the next day is a very traditional way of observing Litha. This is also a solstice that is often celebrated, like the actual ritual moment of celebrating the Sabbat is at high noon on the day of the Sabbat versus in the evening, which is pretty much how every other Sabbat is celebrated. Beltane certainly is celebrated sort of all day long, but into the night. And a lot of the emphasis is at night. Versus Litha, which again, we're doing it during the daytime, noon especially. And again, water, collecting dew on summer solstice morning. Same as what we've already said about all the other stuff, charged with the fullness of solar power and solar energy. So collecting dew to use on your face for beauty, to bless things, to use as a protection symbol. People would take their sheets and literally lay them out on the grass to collect dew overnight and then wring it out to really get as much as possible. They would wash their body in this, and then they would save that water and continue to bless their homes, bless their cattle, bless each other, use it in healing spells throughout the year, etc., etc. Looking through what else. There's definitely some apple stuff that happens at this time of year and tree stuff in general. A lot of offerings to the trees that are going to be producing fruit and giving us good shit later on in the year. And yeah, that's what's up. We've got another list of activities that we'll get to in just a second, but this is kind of covering the basics of what it is that we're doing at Litha. Partying, setting things on fire, getting naked and humping in the woods, drinking and or imbibing of substance of of your choice. Be safe, kids, and don't do drugs. But if you do drugs, do the good ones. Don't sue me. Please only take that advice if you are of age in whatever country or state you are watching this video in. For legal purposes, of course. But it's very that, right? In terms of acknowledging this, we're partying, we're having a good time, we're blessing, we're protecting, we are beautifying. Another thing I'll say about our practices at Litha is a lot of our practices move outside. When we are building altars for Litha, when we are doing rituals for Litha, if we're having gatherings for Litha, very normal to do it all outside, because finally, even in the coldest places around the Northern Hemisphere, the weather is pretty damn nice outside most of the time, unless you're here in Washington, and it will always rain the weekend of Litha. It just has to. It's like, it has to. But otherwise, it's beautiful. But also because it's a type of celebration of the natural world, and the fullness of the natural world really starting to come into its own. During spring, we have lots of flowers. A lot of them are short-lived. And we have like beauty from the world, but we don't necessarily have abundance starting to show in the world. But at Litha season, we are starting to see some of those plants, some of those crops really take off and gain some momentum in terms of their growing process. And many of our plants, we're going to start harvesting at Lunasa season, and that is only 6 weeks from now. So we are going to start seeing the power and the abundance begin to show itself. So again, this idea of coming into the natural world or going back to the natural world, those of us who are trapped in the cities, trapped in the modern world, and building our altars outside, having our parties outside, spending more time outside, even sleeping outside and frolicking outside and doing whatever else. Yes, having sex near your plants, highly potent during this time of year. Highly potent during this time of year for you and your plants and your loved ones. Don't invite them. We're not going there. Okay. So that's like a really good collection of our science, of our ancient myths, all of that good stuff. So who can we work with at this time of year? We have lots and lots and lots of deities to choose from. The last time I taught this class here on YouTube, we focused on Biwe. She's dope. But I'm going to bring a little focus to some of our other deities. This, of course, is Sekhmet, Horus. This is Mithra. This is Sunniva from Finnish myth, healing a horse. Huh, okay, interesting. It's like one of the only myths that we have about her, that she is this sun goddess and she heals horses. Okay, cute. Great Ra, also from the Egyptian pantheon. This is Amaterasu from Japan. This is Soyol, another shot of Mithra or Apollo. Biwe, of course, the one and only. Another shot of Apollo. Hey, that guy. Wait, what is that thing around his head? Huh. Well, that's weird. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Jesus was depicted with a solar cross. You know, this is a dude who has to have like a personality disorder at this point, because poor Jesus has been connected to everything at some point or another, right? When Jesus kicked off, it was all about spring. He was connected to Kybel's consort Attis, who is a youthful god who dies and is resurrected at spring. He's crucified on an evergreen tree. I don't know if any of that sounds familiar to you guys. Jesus is a very obscure myth. It's a really, really obscure character of religion, but you know. And then they slammed him into winter solstice, and now here he's got summer solstice imagery on him. Like, come on, man, give this guy a break. Let him take a nap. Uh, this is the Colossus, but with this spiked solar crown. Sekhmet again. This is Totilhane. I'm mispronouncing their name. Oh, that's terrible of me that I can't remember their name. We'll read it here in just a second because I have a giant list for you guys. Another of Mithra. This is another of Suniva, or Eos. There's Ra carrying the sun on the bark. This is Surya from Hindu myth. This is an as yet unidentified character from Teutonic German pagan area with this 8-pointed solar image at the bottom. The solar the winged sun from Egypt again. And this is a dragon character from Japan, or from China, excuse me. We'll see their name here in just a second too. So here is a massive list of solar entities for you to work with. And you're welcome. There are a lot of people here to work with. Check out some of the names that you recognize. Check out how many deities are here that are ultimately connected to the sun and solar energy. Yeah, they all are affiliated with each other. Check it out. Now, this isn't to say that all of these cultures knew about each other. This isn't to say that all of these cultures got this information from some other culture. One of the things about polytheism and paganism in general is it's really dope to see where cultures traded things. Yes, that happened a lot. But it's also really cool to see where cultures independently came up with the same stuff and they were not in contact with each other or anybody else necessarily for that matter. And this truly is a very, very short list of the deities past and present that have been connected to solar work. And then I had this up last year or 2 years ago, and this is here again for you. These are all oceanic deities that we can work with. Waterway deities and oceanic deities that we can work with. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. So now is normally the time when I would get into our global holidays and our sky chart and all of that stuff. I'm actually going to skip through that very, very quickly for you all. So that's our witches' work. We've talked about all of this stuff, fertility, embodiment, all of that. I don't know if I actually talked about embodiment too much. I guess I'll make a mention here about this. Why the word embodiment? Because again, in spring, we're experimenting. In summer, we're claiming. We are confirming, and we are leaning into our power. We're leaning into our determination. We are transforming out of our youthful, naive, playful, I don't know any better vibes into something that's a bit more mature. And it doesn't mean that we have to be stodgy about it, but it is something that's a little bit more committed. Like, I'm claiming this thing and I'm seeing it through to my best ability. I'm not playing at things anymore. This is serious shit, man. This is serious. I'm being real, dude. It's that kind of a vibe. So we are embodying the stuff that we have been playing at in spring. We're claiming it and we're putting it on and we're taking it as our own. Okay. Global themes when we look around the planet, we kind of already touched on this, but our global themes as we look around the planet are all about life, abundance, vitality, light, warmth. They are about cooperation. They are about abundance. Water becomes a really big thing. Competition, partnership, all of that stuff all comes into the flow as we look through the various holidays that we are celebrating at this time. Some of the other ancient holidays, and this is in the workbook, and we will talk about these also in the podcast. Vestalia, we actually already had Vestalia this year. It came a little early this year. Those are from our Roman friends and ancestors. Scidophoria, which is an ancient Greek holiday that is celebrated still today in modern Turkey, called Gala Bayrami. And it is a competition. There's a lot of horse riding, and it also is preparing folks for the grain harvest that's going to be coming up very soon. The Feast of St. John the Baptist, we already talked about that guy a little bit. Again, very intriguing, the connections there between Jesus and John. John being connected to water, Jesus connected to fire, and them having a moment here at summer solstice, and then a moment again at winter solstice, aka Christ Mass. Ratha Yatra is a Hindu holiday that comes up at this time of year. We'll talk about it more in the podcast. And then, as I said, we have a lot of sacred marriages at this time of year. We have the marriage of Yarilo and Lada, which is part of Kupala night, Savitri Brata, Orpheus and Eurydice, etc. And then we step into those competitive elements as well. So we have the Anactaltian, the Panathenaea, the games of Apollo from our Roman friends and ancestors, the Olympics, etc., etc. All of that sort of coming up at this time of year. Okay, moving on to... These are our constellations that we are working with, generally speaking. These are the fixed stars that we are going to be concerning ourselves with. Let me do this. Nope. Did I pick the wrong one? No. Hey, there we go. Okay. These are our constellations that we are concerning ourselves with. Cancer right there, front and center. We've got Gemini, Yamini, off to the side, on its way out, heading into the west, getting further and further west as the year goes along. And Leo is coming in on the backside. Leo will be coming up over... the stars of Leo will slowly be rising over the eastern horizon as we move through this season. And so Cancer is our sign of the crab. It's our sign of the crayfish. And interestingly to me, it is the sign of the scarab as well. And we know from Egyptian myth that scarabs push the sun across the sky in Egyptian myth. They're responsible for a lot of that process. Khifri is a scarab-headed goddess or god from Egyptian myth, and is deeply involved in the cycles of the sun and timekeeping and the procession of time. But I want to bring your attention to the very center of Cancer. And it's probably hard to see. It's hard to see in real life too, but there in the very center of the constellation is this cluster of stars. There's about 1,000 dim stars in this cluster. And this is called the beehive. It's also called the manger. But Chaldeans, about 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, referred to this as the gate of men. And this was thought to be the place in the sky where souls descended when a person was born and ultimately came into being here on the earth and lived a life. And sure enough, across the wheel, when we hit winter solstice, we have another point in the sky called the Gate of God by the Chaldeans, where it was thought that souls shot back out and left Earth and went back to whatever that stuff is. Went back to deity, went back to source, went back to whatever. So here again, we have this opposition thing, this energy running along this current of, stuff coming in at winter solstice or at summer solstice, doing its thing, and then stuff going out at winter solstice and being gone, being quiet, leaving for a while. So these are our fixed stars. You'll have to look up on your own the appropriate dates. We do talk about it in the podcast as well, but due to the precession of the equinoxes, a lot of these fixed stars are not actually found within the constellations they are connected to anymore. They are found in other parts of the sky. Why? Because everything moves. And also because the collections of stars that we think of as the constellations are not all collected in the same space in sky. In the universe, I should say. They are vastly separate from each other. And some of those stars are very close to us. And so as we move through our cycle as a solar system around our galaxy, those things move against the sky. And then some of those stars are so far away that no matter where our planet goes, no matter what is happening, and actually the precession of the equinox is not specifically connected to our movement in the galaxy, it's actually about the wobble of our pole on our axis. Some of those fixed stars are so far away that they don't move, or they move so incrementally that they are basically in the same place forever, but the constellations appear to be moving in front of them. There is a ton of information about the precession, P-R-E, not procession, the precession of the equinoxes. You can also look up the phrase zodiacal precession as a means of understanding this better than I'm going to explain in the 30 seconds that I'm talking about it. But these fixed stars have lots of incredible myth and symbolism connected to them, and they are indicators also of the type of work and the mythic symbolism and imagery that we're working with at this time of year. Okay, so there we go. That's what I wanted. Let's get into our tarot and a little bit of our astrology. Actually, you know, I think I'm going to skip the astrology because we're going to talk about it in the podcast as we move through the year. Well, no. Get out of there. Let's go back to this. Is that what I want? No, it's not. Again, I'm a professional. Put your judging eyes away. I know what I'm doing. I see you out there with your judgments. Here is our sky guide. And I've got the aphelion marked on here. Note, July 4th. Well, isn't that weird? The date that we are the furthest away from God. I can't make this up, people. The day that we are the furthest away from the light, from the heat, from protection, from wisdom. Yeah. I don't know what you want from me. Grab a screenshot of this. This is also available in the Patreon folder. All of these slides are available in the Patreon folder, whether I show them in class or not. They are up for us. And we start off with the sidereal movement of the sun into Gemini. Again, this is part of why I talk about Gemini a bit during our Litha season. We're done with Gemini, kind of, but we're kind of not. And again, I kind of see the twins as holding the gateway for us to step into summer and into our Cancer season work. We are not going to have our first lunar moment of Litha until July 3rd. Where we have our full moon in Capricorn. And then deep into July, we will have our first new moon of Litha, our new moon of Cancer season, and our first new moon of summer. Now, as an aside, some pagan traditions hold off on their summer solstice celebrations until the first full moon after the first new moon after summer solstice, which again brings us really close to Lughnasadh season or Lughnasadh season, brings us deep into July, deep into Cancer season, most likely. But that's a thing that can happen for some pagan groups. So this kind of touches on something that I talk about as well from time to time, which is don't freak out too much about getting your solstice exactly on the right day at exactly the right time. If you want to do protective work, if you want to do a ritual dedicated to the sun, if you want to do some kind of magic or a spell or ritual or a ceremony that is very specifically dedicated to this moment of the sun having its longest 3 days of the year, well, you've got basically a 3-day window to do that in, right? That's a thing that's kind of asking for specific action. So we have to be kind of specific on the date that we pick for that magic. But celebrating the height of the sun, we really kind of have at least 6 weeks to kind of dig in on that project, because the sun is really riding high at its highest in the totality of the end of June and all of July. As we approach Lunasa season or Lunisad season, we do begin, it's still hot, but we do begin to see the days are just getting a little bit shorter, a little bit shorter. So depending on the kind of magic that you're working, maybe that's really important for you and maybe it isn't. But that is we've got some meteor showers, we've got our full moons, we've got our new moons, we've got the sun moving and doing stuff. You could check that stuff out. And as I said, we're going to talk about all of this in the podcast coming up in the next few weeks. So no reason to get super in depth on that. For our Cancer moon work that we are doing with this new moon, we are having an opportunity to indulge in spontaneous conversations. We are having an opportunity to examine our relationships, especially those where a lot of nurturing is involved. We want to connect more with people, ideas, and genders that share a sameness with us. And that starts with however you interpret gender and however you interpret your gender for yourself. And that can be genetic ancestors, that can be chosen family, that can even be cultural people, cultural ancestors who have cultural movements or environments that mothered you. All of that is very appropriate to work with for the Cancer new moon. Just think about it, consider it. You might do a little journaling on the samenesses and the differences between you and those beings. When I say the word mother, what comes up for you? That stuff. / sorry if that's a lot of baggage. And it is for some folks. And then when we have our full moon in Capricorn, we want to acknowledge and honor our blood ancestors. And, I wrote that a long time ago, and even now I kind of argue with myself again. This is one of those, if you want to work with blood ancestors, that's cool. If you want to work with chosen family ancestors, I think that's very appropriate. If you want to work with cultural ancestors, I think that that's very appropriate. Living or dead, adopted families, mentors that have been deeply involved in your life. And part of the work that we're doing here is saying the things that we need to say to them, whether that's thanks or screw you, to pull back or pull in some of the power from our connection with our ancestors. And it might be both, depending on what your genetic lineage is or the beings that you choose to work with. Okay. So now let us get into tarot. Because for me, tarot cards are like flashcards for the stuff that we're doing in the Sabbats. It blows my mind how deeply connected the symbols in tarot are to the seasons and the Sabbats. / I'm a little crazy, so maybe I see things that people don't see. Maybe I'm on the spectrum. Whatever, it's fine. Pattern recognition from trauma? Sure, that's cool. Whatever works. However we've ended up here we are, right? These cards are from the builders of the Aditum deck. I love working with this deck. They are similar to the illustrations on the Smith-Waite deck, but, with some zhuzhing, with some changes, with some adjustments. And the two cards that we're working with deeply are the Chariot, which connects us to the sign of Cancer, and the High Priestess, which connects us to the Moon, which is the ruling planet of Cancer. And if you want to, you can also work with the cards that connect us to Gemini season, which would be the Lover's card, Gemini, and the Magician, Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini. All of that is totally appropriate. When we take a deep look at the cards here, let me see if I can find there we go. We take a deep look at the symbolism on these cards. We see a lot of really powerful stuff. on all of them, especially the chariot. Um, Note that winged sun right there in the very center, along with a yoni lingam, which is the union of male, female, up, down, black, white, the binary world. Not the only magical world that we can work with, but certainly a potent one nonetheless. We see two sphinxes that are black and white and black. And we see this being in a chariot, very much like our sun in a chariot being carried across the sky. Here we are being carried along in our process. And truly, what the chariot card is referring to is a magical idea called Merkaba or Merkaba. It's pronounced both ways, which means the chariot of the soul, aka the body. And it is, we are literally committing to embodying the stuff that we have been talking about this entire time. We're surrounded by magical symbols, and in the chariot card, we don't necessarily understand all of the power that we are surrounded by and the ramifications therein. But nonetheless, here we are. And we are riding high. One of the phrases traditionally associated with the chariot card is swift victory and swift defeat. And I think of that in terms of the sun rising in the morning and setting only at night, right? Like just a few hours later, literally later that same day, we're already going down. And so that to me is a big part of the connection here. But in this moment, we're riding high just like the sun at summer solstice. This person wears a belt that is decorated with the symbols from the zodiac, and it's even tilted like the celestial plane in our sky, which I love. It's just such a cool detail. There's a canopy of stars, millions, thousands of stars overhead, which makes me think of the manger or the beehive that we see in Cancer. This being has moons on their shoulders. They have a star on their forehead. They're, surrounded by magical symbols. They're not entirely certain of the magics that they're working with, hence why it's two sphinxes, because they are enigmas. They're not completely able to understand or see the deep nature of the wisdom and the holiness. They just know these are magical systems, and I need to apply myself to them to be able to get through this harvest cycle, to be able to read the sky, etc., etc. And then next to them is the high priestess. And the high priestess oversees a really important gateway. If we look behind them, there are these two pillars holding up this tapestry or a veil of some type. On the veil are pomegranates, and the pomegranates are arranged in the pattern of the 10 Sephiroth on the Tree of Life from Kabbalistic magic. But if we look very carefully at the edges of the tapestry, between the tapestry and the pillars, we will see a vast ocean behind them. And also, in fact, their very robe and skirts are turning into water and pouring off of the card. And so this is a being that is overseeing a threshold, overseeing a gateway, protecting us and holding us back even at times to make sure that we are ready to walk through this. And they are also the embodiment of everything that water represents in our magical practices. Healing, intuition, our spiritual world and processes, the depths of emotion, the unconscious, the subconscious, etc., etc. They sit between the dark half and the light half, and etc., etc., right? We even have an equal armed cross right there in the middle. What? Come on. It's too good. It's too good. We even have her wearing a headdress or a crown or a headpiece of some type that is a waxing and a waning moon, holding a full moon in the center. And this also to me very much looks like the crown that Isis wears. It's very similar to Hathor, in my opinion, of the sun being between the horns of Hathor. So on and on and on, right? Again, maybe I'm just seeing some of that stuff in there and it's not actually there, but there it is to be seen. So I'm looking. Okay, just a little reading for you, and it is this. As we move from Gemini into Cancer, we work with 4 different cards describing various parts of the conversation between the superconsciousness, the subconscious, and the self-conscious. We start by witnessing the influence of intuition and inner will on our perceptions, but we can fall into the trap of assuming that is coming from us and not something necessarily outside of us or that we might be working with. However, as we open ourselves up to the process of bringing our own voice down and listening to what's left, which is partially a reflection of the universe and our shared experience, we can be overwhelmed with our own apparent insignificance and the general suffering in the world as we try to rationalize the chaos of existence. When we learn to be a temple to spirit and allow these forces to flow through us, we come closer to our reason for living. And when I say our, I mean our individual reason for living. Only when we quiet the mind and open our hearts, witnessing the bounty of life and the mysteries of the universe, can we come into the place where the universe is presenting exactly what we need, because we are in tune with exactly what the universe needs from us. But we will only learn these valuable lessons by descending down into the physical plane and living a life with all of the highs and the lows of that experience. So that is some stuff for you to kind of meditate on and think about as we are considering this whole conversation of power and embodiment and choosing things and claiming things and becoming very determined about things. This is what's up. This is the process of that process. Okay, so moving into the final moments of our class. Ritual forms that we have to work with. You know, getting freaky, honestly. Let's just get weird with it. Set it on fire, get naked, do what you gotta do. Running between 2 bonfires or jumping a fire. Don't sue me, by the way. Do that if you're capable. Walking through a garden naked, romping in a garden naked, also very cool. Renewing our vows. And that can really be to anybody. We can renew our vows to our domestic partners, our marriage partners, our committed partners, but also to our friends. We can renew our vows to our community. We can renew our vows to our ancestors. Like, wherever we have made a vow, this is a great time to renew that and recommit ourselves to that energy. Safely keeping a candle lit for 24 hours. Do that in whatever way makes sense for you. Don't burn your house down. Don't sue me. Communing with fairies. Your mileage may vary. Be careful because they're feisty all the time, and especially at this time of year. Divination in fire, utilizing fire as a divinatory tool. Very, very cool. Conducting your ritual at noon, staying up all night, torchlight processions, not those kind, the cool kind, don't get crazy. Walking a labyrinth, very cool. Very similar to the pattern of the sun, right? We're going into the center and we're coming back out again. We have that moment of stasis and then we reverse the process and we head back in the opposite direction. Gathering and drying herbs, as we talked about. Building paper boats out of biodegradable paper and setting them afloat on the water. And any and all types of protection magic are very appropriate for us at Litha season times. Very briefly, let me throw some of this up. These are some symbols that you can work with in your spell crafting or your altars. You could wear jewelry or t-shirts with these symbols, whatever makes sense for you. But solar symbols of all types and shapes are very, very appropriate, as well as anything oceanic, anything representing a cauldron or a chalice, also very appropriate. a short list of our plant helpers that we can work with at this time of year. Whatever ones here that are safe for eating, do that. Although I think I have other foods somewhere else. But these are all appropriate for burning as incense, utilizing in our incense blends, wearing as perfume, whatever. As you know, skin safe, yada, yada, yada. You know what your allergies are. Here we go. Food and drink. All of this is very appropriate to make, eat, share. If you are doing any kind of potlucks, these are all very, very appropriate and celebratory. You can know why you made what you made. Not everybody there has to know unless you want to share. But if also you're looking for ideas for stuff to make for your Litha celebration, your Sabbat, here's a short list. Okay. Incense and oils, stuff to burn as well here at this time. Yummy, delicious, wonderful. Animal helpers that we can invite in to work with or be inspired by. When we are working with animal helpers that are animals that really exist or literally exist in a physical form here on Earth right now, always ask if they would like to participate and then go from there. Never force or cajole or manipulate an animal into assisting you. Let them make the choice. And then, all of our mythical beings, good luck, because those are some fiery bastards right there. And these are some mineral helpers if you're looking for stones that you can either wear or keep on your altar or charge up with Litha energy to dispense throughout the season. These are all very, very appropriate. Okay. Last but not least, I know I said I was going to end early. Hi, welcome to my class. I'm always a liar with that. All the old people here that have been here for years were like, no, that's never going to happen. And you were correct. We should have bet on it. Some meditations for you to work with. There's a few things that I want to emphasize at this point in the class. So first off, let's say this. These are meditations that you can work with in your Sabbat ritual. You can have these journal entries kind of written down in a journal and come back to them throughout Litha season and kind of reflect on them and just sort of ponder these as you move through the days and weeks, however you would like to work with them. Think of all of the energy that you radiate. How do you share your gifts? We all have the capacity to nurture. What does nurturing look like for you? That is not a gendered practice. Although a selection of humanity would like to pretend that it is. It ain't. We all nurture things. What does that look like for you? And I encourage you to explore the wild expanse of reality. And the wild expanse of your own spirit. What would help you progress in that work? That is something that we want to call in during this time of year, because ultimately we are summoning in, calling in, opening up space for, becoming containers for great power. We are mimicking the sun. We are coming into a high point of our process, and we are accumulating and collecting and holding in our reservoirs great power. We will then dispense that power. We will embody that power. We will accept the responsibility around that power as we move deeper into summer in Litha, Lunasa season, and ultimately we reap the benefits or the product of that process as we move into fall, Mabon season, Samhain season. And then we will rest again in winter, right? But that's across the wheel from us. That's a long time from now. So currently what we want to do is call ourselves out on our shit, right? We want to look at the Oak King in us that is holding back, that is holding on to the past, that is committed to tradition, but is afraid of growth. And we want to kill that king. I mean, I can think of a few kings that need to be killed in this world. The Oak King is one of them, but let's be real. This is the season of killing the king. And the king in us, in a way, is this sovereign thing, right? That's a beautiful thing to say, praise to the kings out there. But, and also, it is the part of us that holds on to the past. It's the part of us that holds on to tradition when innovation and courage is actually the way that we need to lean in. And to be brave about what we don't know is coming. And to be open to the potential that unknown could actually be really positive and really helpful for us. So here at this time, our job is to become the vessel, to become the chalice, to become the great cauldron within which that power pours in and is stored. And then we also want to call in the wisdom and the responsibility around dispensing that power and utilizing that power in the best ways possible for, yes, ourselves, but also our communities and the species at large and the planet at large and all of her beings. This is our work at Litha as witches, to romp, to celebrate, to knock the sacred boots, to enjoy and imbibe, to embody that joy and be in our skin and revel in our life on the physical plane, but also to accept that we are world builders, we make shit happen, we destroy, we create, and the universe is giving us a little pocket of power to push our projects forward. Can we step up to that? Can we be responsible with that power? This is the time to step into those places and those moments. Blessed be. Thank you for joining me with this, solar moment of Litha. I'm glad you all were here. I am so grateful to be able to do this work. I'm so grateful to be able to share this knowledge with folks, and that you all are here and want to participate in this process and do the thing. Do the damn thing. It's fucking cool. It's fucking cool, man. Love it, love it, love it. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Again, for folks that want access to the workbook and all the stuff that's in it, join my Patreon, $9 and higher, the Venus level and up. If you want to do readings with me, it's the Sun level at $23 a month and higher. You get access to all of the behind the scenes stuff, the extra stuff that I don't publish anywhere else, a warm, buttery feeling knowing that you're supporting me doing this work, and our monthly tarot classes, etc., etc. And that's it. Happy Litha. Blessed be. And I'm going to stop lecturing, for God's sake, at this moment. And wait a minute, because we have about a 30-second lag. I'm going to glance at chat now. Hi, Patty. Hi, Jen. Hi, Bill. Hi, Nova. Hi, everybody. So cool to see you. I'm so glad you're here. And does anybody have any questions? Is there anything? I know I've blasted you for 2 frickin' hours. It's okay if your brain is like, whoa. But if anybody has any questions, if anybody has anything that they want to talk about or ask about, I'm here. Let's do it. I'll wait a few moments to see who shows up. What do you want? What do you want from me? Take a drink of water. Oh, I'm glowing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, the sun is coming at a strange angle, and it's like peeking through the trees a little bit. If it was sunny or if it wasn't so overcast for us, I probably would be covered in rainbows right now. Because I have so many prisms up in this room. There's like prisms everywhere in this room. Okay. Are you guys just slowly typing? Or are there no questions? I'm going to wait a little bit longer. And it's okay if nobody has any questions. Like I said, I know I blasted you all with a boatload of information just now and a lot of things to ponder, a lot of things to consider. You can always come and join me on Patreon. Send me a note on social media too if you want. I'm on Instagram, Megan Angus. Um, Join my newsletter. Um, yep, smiles. Mermaid seems a good day for. Absolutely, mermaids are great deities for Litha. Yes, 100%. 100%. Yes. And more so as we move through summer. Great time to kind of kick off working with mermaids. Mermaids are deeply connected to Yemoya, the Yoruba goddess of waterways and oceans and rivers and streams. And she is often compared to a mermaid. Mermaid stuff is often very similar to a lot of the things that we see with Yemoya. Yeah. And her celebrations happen technically all throughout the year because of the African diaspora. Her worshippers were scattered to the winds across the planet thanks to white colonizers. And so a lot of groups that worshipped Yemoya worshipped her whenever they had a chance to or whenever they were allowed to, or, you know, if there was another saint or like a Virgin Mary Day. Yemoya has been syncretized with Virgin Mary stuff all over the planet. But late August, early September is another time that we work with her big time. And mermaids come up then too, but that's summertime, right? So same season for sure. All right, nobody's typing anything, so I'm assuming that's it. Uh, Okay. I love you all. Thanks for being here. Blessed be. Mwah. Go kill some kings and set some fires. Metaphorically speaking, of course.